So today I'm joined by Surinder Gill. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have this conversation with you, and something that I hear all the time from clients, and I know it's something that you probably do as well, is I know better, so why does this keep happening? Why do you think that experience is so common for people?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few reasons. The first thing that pops up for me is that it's a pattern that they're familiar with.
Hmm.
And so I mean, in NLP, we talk about the strategy of how we do our habitual behavior. So the things that are happening internally and externally in a specific sequence, to get that predictable outcome. As we fire off that strategy, it becomes something that is so natural to us. And because we've done it so many times and it's so familiar that we do it again. And it doesn't seem to matter at that point that consciously we don't want to do it.
Hmm.
All that really matters is that our unconscious mind has taken control. And because the pattern is so familiar, it's really just looking for there's a slide that I actually have in in the NLP training course where it's like a series of dominoes. Like you got the one domino standing here, and right beside it's the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like. It's like as soon as you knock over that first one, it hits the second one. And even though you really don't want the final domino to topple over, it's like you're helpless at this point. It's like it's just gonna happen, right? That's a good way of looking at a strategy. I
Mm.
don't think that's all it is, but I think that's a good place to start is to learn how to interrupt your strategy.
Yeah. And so when it comes to strategies, I mean, I know we will probably talk as well about what you focus on is really important because what you focus on, your subconscious, unconscious mind is going to look for evidence to prove that you're right. So if you're focusing on, I don't want that end domino to fall over, guess what's going to happen? And we've all seen it in sequences or areas in our life where we think like something bad's going to happen, something bad's going to happen. And then it happens and you're like, see, I told you, I knew this was going to happen. But shifting focus is a big part of it. In terms of strategies, what else is important for people around this? Like willpower doesn't work, correct? So,
Yeah, no, I mean, willpower will work for short term for some people. And for some people, they can even get it from short term to you know, to the point where they'll convince themselves that maybe this is the answer because they have more willpower than maybe some others, you know? So this is the person who, and I see this with sometimes with smoking clients because I do a lot of smoking cessation. And there are people out there that will last several months. And then when I ask them, well, how long did you go before the cravings went away? And they say, oh, I had the cravings every day. And yet they managed to quit for 6 months.
mhm,
Now, those people are rare, though. Those people are rare. Most people don't have that kind of willpower. Sometimes it could be, their blessing is also their curse. Because if they have enough willpower that they can get success for a long enough period of time, they can convince themselves that they just need a little bit more willpower,
mhm.
but that's not what they need because when you're focused on willpower, what you're taking your focus off of is what meaning did you assign to get your brain to tell you that this is the appropriate behavior. So they're not peeling back the layers of the onion far. They're not going to the core. They're not going to the root problem of why they're engaging in that compulsion, because that's a symptom, right? The smoking, in this case, we're talking about smokers right now.
Yeah.
That smoking is a symptom of something else. So the willpower alone won't get rid of the problem. It might get rid of it for a period of time.
Hmm.
But ultimately, what I think you have to do is shift your focus so that you assign better meanings. And I think that's what you're talking about, right? Is when you shift your focus, you can assign a better meaning. And the behavior that you access is coming from what? It's coming from what you have made something mean.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, so strategies is an interesting conversation. That was the biggest thing. So, okay, I met Surinder at a 2-day training that he did in Mississauga last year. And I was a person who already had NLP training before I came to his thing. And my spouse said, hey, there's this training. Do you want to go to it? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Okay, fine. This training was so, like, it was transformative for me in terms of how I look at things, how I look at the world, how I interact with family, with relationships around me, and then with clients as well. So, something very interesting. We will share the link in the comments on this episode if you want to learn more about this. But the thing that really hit home for me when you talk about strategies was the end of this. And looking at things of the problem that you have right now is actually a symptom. And realizing that, okay, so smoking is actually the symptom. Why are you doing this? Is the whole sequence of events that leads to that. And when Surinder said, like, it's the same steps that lead to that every single time, it was like, holy crap. So if we can interrupt those steps that lead up to the symptom, everything changes. So I thought that was very cool. Yeah, do you want to share
Yeah.
a bit about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually an eye opener for people. That's why I talk about it in that 2 day event, because you're not the first person that has said that to me. And people who have already had NLP training, because many times with NLP training, the strategy piece is a little more complex than some people want to tackle in the NLP practitioner level. And so they reserve it for master practitioner. The reason that I go as far as I do at the practitioner, well, in your case, I went and do it in a fair bit of depth right in the 2 day event that's pre-practitioner training. It's because it's just that powerful. It's because it's such a game changer. And the one thing that really jumped out to me when I learned about strategies is that a positive affirmation said at that precise moment inside a strategy produces a much more profound effect on your psyche and the way that you're interpreting an information a stimulus than just using positive affirmations in the day-to-day in your day-to-day life. Not that there isn't value in doing positive affirmations. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that when you learn your strategy and inside of a nanosecond you can with precision, it's like throwing a dart at a dartboard, but you're not satisfied with hitting the bullseye. You need to hit the very center of the bullseye. That's the amount of accuracy that you can achieve with a positive affirmation. And because the emotion that a person feels is in large part dictated by their inner dialogue, the voice in their head, if they can change the voice in their head at that precise moment and hit the center of the bullseye of that dartboard, then they will change the emotion that they're attaching to that event, to that stimulus. And once the emotion changes, they can no longer complete the strategy and do the symptom. So if the strategy has to unfold in a very specific way in order for a person to, reach for their phone to scroll Instagram or to go to the kitchen and go and get some cookies, even though, they're trying to lose weight or smoking a cigarette, if they can interrupt that strategy and they can do it with volition and they can do it accurately each and every time that strategy attempts to unfold, then they no longer have that compulsion. And so when I do this with my clients in the very first session, there's no need for me to do agreements, for example, for like, well, this is how many sessions it is, sign this agreement that you're going to pay me. I don't do any of that anymore. I just say, come to the first session. If you get great results, then I'll see you on your second session.
Yeah.
And it doesn't change anything. I like it better. In fact, honestly, I think it has improved my business because then the people that were on the fence about whether or not they want to work with me, they're more likely to go over on to the side of, okay, let's give it a shot
Mhm.
because financially I'm only obligated for the first session.
Yeah, which totally makes sense because basically they realize like this is the change. This is where change happens, and this is something that I want to be a part of. So
Yeah.
it's kind of that's kind of a sneak peek in terms of the strategy side of things. But when it comes to goal setting, so if willpower doesn't work, what's a good technique to start to focus on when it comes to goal setting? Because we're coming into the beginning of 2026, and I know this is a really hot time for people to look to change things. And many people will
Yeah.
go from one new year to the next year, new year, and it's the same goal over and over because it wasn't successful last year. So how can we
Mhm.
improve that?
Well, I mean, the first thing is many people are familiar with the concept of SMART goals,
Mhm.
SMART goals. And if you aren't, I suggest you look it up. I'll go over it really high level just because I think it is really important. You want to be specific about your goal. So let's say, for example, it's a weight loss goal. And I know that many of you might have that because this time of year is when I start getting phone calls. I just had one. I literally just had a consultation from somebody who wants to lose weight, and she signed up for the program. She's actually signed up for my breakthrough as well as the NLP practitioner training. You have to be specific about what it is that you want. If somebody says, I want to lose weight, the first thing I say is, well, how much weight? And if you don't want to measure the number on a scale, which might not actually be the best way, especially if you are going to change your eating while you're also going to start exercising. And if you're going to start lifting weights, well, muscle weighs more than fat, and we have all that stuff to consider. So it's not necessarily the best way, but we need something.
Yep.
So it might be, I've had clients that say, yeah, I don't like numbers. I don't like standing on the scale. What I want to go by is my dress size. And I say,
Mhm.
good, that works. We just need a way of measuring it, which is the M, right? So if S is be specific, right? What is it that you want? Be specific. M is measurable. Make sure that you have some way of measuring it. And that measurement could be a dress size, it could be measuring your waist or your hips or whatever you like.
Mhm.
Make sure it's attainable. And and R is realistic. So let's talk about the difference between attainable and realistic. Sometimes we have goals that are attainable. For example, you know, could I have could I create six-pack abs for myself if I wanted to? In theory, yes. Theoretically, I'm 54 years old. Yes, I work out every day, but it's not what I do for a living. So is it attainable? Yes. Is it realistic? For me, it's not, because it's not really something that I have a desire for. It's not like I'm a movie star or something where my next movie role is going to depend on me looking a certain way. So I want it to be attainable, but I also want it to be realistic.
Yeah.
So make sure that you cover both of those. And then the T is just for a timestamp. You have to put a deadline on it. So sometimes people will set a goal, like a business goal, like I want to increase my sales. Well, that's not a goal, right? A goal is how much do you want to increase your sales by, right? Well, I want my gross sales to go up by 20%. And, I want my margins to be 9% higher at the end of when? Well, by the end of the year, December 31st, 2026. Is that realistic? Is it attainable? Well, yes, because I'm going to have to go to this many more networking events so once you figure out all of that, the odds of you attaining your goal are much greater.
Yeah.
So that's the first part. The second part, I mean, this is where we can go into this in great depth, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. When you're setting a goal, I believe that it's a good idea to ensure that you think about it in a way that you create the emotion inside yourself as though that goal has already been achieved.
Mhm.
So that you're not saying to yourself, I will feel this particular way, right? I will feel X in 6 months when I achieve my goal. Because what you're telling your unconscious mind is that you do not feel X, whatever that is right now, like confident, happy, empowered.
Mhm.
But instead, you're feeling something else, right? I'm not feeling X, I'm feeling Y. Well, what is Y? Oh, it's a feeling of wanting, maybe. It's a feeling of, well, I don't have it right now. It's a feeling of the pain, the emotional pain of not having realized my goal already. And so what that does is it puts us into a negative emotional state by saying, there's my goal out there in the future. I will feel good when I have it. Okay, well, then how do I feel right now? The opposite of how I'm going to feel when I have it.
Yep.
And so if I have that inside me going on emotionally, that will reduce my flexibility of behavior. Why? Because negative emotion produces less ways of thinking, and negative emotion produces less ways of behaving because it produces less ways of thinking.
Yeah.
So we're making it more difficult to achieve our goal by feeling negative emotion because we have convinced ourselves that we won't be able to feel the positivity until
Oh,
we have success.
yeah.
But that's the thing that stands in the way of the success.
Yeah. I can
So,
totally relate to that when it comes to the weight loss. And this was years ago. And I've learning NLP and the different things has made a big change there. But years ago, I had a weight loss goal and I was like, I will be happy when I get to this number. And then I got to the number and I was like, oh, well, maybe I just need 5 more pounds. Maybe I just need to lose. I wasn't chasing the number, I was chasing happiness and not realizing that's something that I could have right now. You can choose your state right now. And so that's another part of the goal setting. Make sure it's something that is not necessarily state driven because you can choose that at any time. But what are you actually looking for as an outcome when you get to your goal?
That's a really good point, Kate, that you just brought up because you're 100% right. Any emotional state that you've ever felt in your life, you can feel it right now. Because all you have to do is associate into some time in your past when you were experiencing that emotion, and then you have it.
Mhm.
So as soon as you say that I will be happy when I lose X number of pounds, you're contradicting what's actually true. You're telling yourself something's true when really it's not at all. You do not have to wait. You can be happy about the fact that you are going to achieve that goal in the future, but the happiness can be right here, right now,
Mhm.
not out there in the future, right? So a goal is in the future, a state is in the present.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
And
really
it's
good point.
when and holding on to that too, it's like if I get there and okay, so my body is a different size, but I haven't done any work on the inside that actually leads to that happiness or done anything to shift my state, that's why that didn't happen. That's why I was continuing to chase like I need 5 more pounds, I need 5 more pounds. Right? So the state thing is really cool. That's something that we do with anchors and different things to show people that they can step into that state anytime. But I love how you shared SMART goals. And I think it's such a valuable way of looking at things because the realistic is an interesting, well, I guess the A and the R are interesting ones because I've heard people say before, like, okay, I want to get this goal with my business. And you ask them, is that realistic? And they're like, well, yeah, if I put achievable and realistic, if I put all the work into that, I'll get that. Okay, so you want to run a marathon, but you're also running a business right now and you also have 3 young kids. Can you do those all at the same time? It's good to consider like ecology, like your whole life. How is this going to affect you in different ways as well? And make sure that your goal is aligned with that because it will impact the outcome, right?
Yeah, that's why you can't focus just on what's attainable,
Hmm.
right? Sure, many things are attainable, but when, like you said, when you look at it in the context of your entire life and your family, and if you have young children and vacations and travel, and you got a new puppy that requires a lot of attention, like you have all these other things in your life, and if you don't consider them, you could end up disappointing yourself, and then you confirm your failures. And then that can add on to limiting beliefs that you have about what you're capable of. But meanwhile, you are very capable. Maybe what's happening is you just didn't set a very realistic goal. And then when you didn't achieve this unrealistic goal, you took that belief that you have about yourself that's, the root cause of why you're not having success to begin with, and you're solidifying it. You're making it bigger.
Hmm.
You're making it stronger. Another thing that I want to touch on is when you said, a state is something that you can feel now and a goal is something that's out in the future. If you don't feel the positivity of having achieved that goal, if you don't live as though you've achieved that goal already, then you can start to feel like that happiness or that confidence or that empowerment that you're going to feel when the goal is achieved is going to be, like out of this world. Like it's going to make you feel so good that it's going to be, you build it up in your mind to be something that it's not going to be. And so then once you achieve your goal, all of a sudden you feel disappointed,
Hmm.
right? Because if you've anticipated happiness for, a year to achieve a goal, it's not like that the happiness that you thought that you were going to feel is going to remain at that level for the entire year. You're
Yeah.
constantly thinking about how happy you're going to feel when you achieve your goal. And then all of a sudden you achieve your goal, and then you sit there and you wait for this happiness, this overwhelming euphoric feeling to come in, and guess what, it doesn't come. So then what happens is you feel disappointed. So
Mhm.
instead of being happy, you go, oh my gosh, all that work for this. And then you could end up sabotaging yourself and going, well, what was the point, right?
Yeah.
All of it, and then you start putting more weight back on.
Yeah.
I've seen
And
that with clients.
oh, I bet. actually a very interesting, we'll talk about that probably later. But the concept of, yeah, it's the, I've expected this to be this amazing transformative thing in my life, and then it doesn't happen. And when it comes to limiting beliefs, is that how limiting beliefs are formed potentially in the future when you've had an experience like that?
Limiting beliefs, the standard explanation for how limiting beliefs are formed is that it's a negative emotional event that you've had in your life, and your unconscious mind created a limiting belief for you because at that time in your life, that limiting belief made it easier for you to survive, or at least from your unconscious mind's perspective, it contributed to your survival and safety.
Okay.
And so if you have an intense enough negative emotional event, and your unconscious mind says that, well, believing, option A, what's behind, door number A, that could lead to massive problems for us in the future. But if we just believe what's under behind option B, door B, that will make it easier for us to navigate this challenge. So then we adopt that limiting belief because we feel like, well, this is a better option than what's over here. And but the problem can be that because we create these limiting beliefs, oftentimes about our worthiness and what, whether we deserve success, because it's unconscious, we don't know it's there. We then go through life looking for evidence to support a belief that we're not even aware of. And we find it everywhere. And because we're not aware of what we're doing, we're defenseless against it. So now this limiting belief ends up, I always describe this as like a snowball rolling down a hill, and the snowball just gets bigger and bigger. And there's nothing you can do about it because you're not conscious of what you're doing.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so then people end up producing all kinds of challenges and difficulties for themselves. And sometimes when they have success, they are afraid of that success because it doesn't feel comfortable or familiar for them to have it. And what does feel comfortable and familiar is for them to struggle. So these are the people that they'll have an opportunity to create massive success, but they'll throw up roadblocks, and they themselves are the ones that are creating the roadblocks. The roadblocks aren't out there in the environment, they're a projection that's coming from inside them.
Yeah. Can you share an example actually? Because I know I've heard some stories that you've shared at trainings and different things, but about a limiting belief when it comes to weight loss.
Yeah, like a secondary gain, you mean?
Hmm.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's a story that I commonly share because it seems to really resonate with people. And I remember actually the day that this happened, I see a lot of clients on Zoom, but this one was in my office. And this was a woman who she had a sister that was younger than her, but not much, but like a year, that was thin. And my client was overweight, and she'd been overweight since she was a kid. And she said that she had a mother that was really mean and nasty and liked to embarrass her, like my client, embarrass her, in particular in front of family. So she said when they would have like a family gathering or something like that, she would make comments about how much she's eating, and she would make comparisons with her thin sister. And one of the times, what she said was, if so, my client ended up divorced, her husband had left her. And so her mother said to her, if you had lost weight like I told you, your husband probably wouldn't have left you. And she said it in front of the entire family at a family dinner, like an extended family. Like it was the way she described it, it was like a party.
Mhm.
And what she said was that, and she would go visit her mother once a week in the retirement home, and her sister, who had moved away, hardly ever visited. My client did not like her mother, but she went once a week out of obligation. And she realized that the reason that she wasn't losing weight was because she didn't want her mother to have the satisfaction. She didn't want her mother to say, "See, if you just listened to me when you were younger, right? Like why couldn't you do this when I told you? And now look at you, you're in your 50s and now you're getting control of your health." She didn't want to hear it from her mother, and she also didn't want her mother to be able to say, "See, I was right all along. Aren't you happier that you're thinner?" So this is a complex equivalence. I mean, this is using NLP jargon, but this is what this is referred to as when we make one thing mean another.
Mhm.
Like if I lose weight, then my mother is going to get away with all the emotional abuse that I had to endure at her hands. And that's not fair. And I can't reconcile that. So how do I reconcile that my mother should be held accountable for her behavior? Well, one way to reconcile that is for me to self-harm, to eat my way into an unhealthy body so that I can say, see, look at what you did. It's all your fault. And by the way, I have seen this many times with clients that are holding somebody accountable that's not even alive anymore.
Wow.
So it doesn't have to be that. So, because in this case, you might think, so when her mother passes away, will my client just automatically lose weight? No, because she was not conscious of this pattern.
Yeah.
Now, once she's conscious of the pattern, she can, well, in this case, she lost 70 pounds. And I believe that a big part of why she was able to do it, well, she cried in my office when she discovered this. So I knew once I saw that this was a huge unconscious pattern that she was gonna now be able to manage. But even if she still kept it alive while her mother was alive, it's possible that she might have stopped doing it after her mother passed away, but only if she's conscious of it.
Yeah.
Only if she's conscious of it.
That story has been playing like over and over again in her life, in her head for her entire life. Right? And it's like what we project into the world too. And so other people see you and it's like, oh, well, I was tormented by my mom when I was a child. And the story justifies so many different things for us until we realize, like you said, like shining a light in a different direction where it's like, oh, I've never looked at things that way before. So, yeah, very powerful. And this is one, I'm glad that you shared that because this is the kind of thing that I see with clients all the time too, where it's like we don't realize that there's something that's causing us to behave the way that we are. And we didn't get into the filters and the way that the mind filters information and different things, but it's the meaning that you put on things that what's really matters. And that's what the breakthrough and that's what doing NLP training and all these things helps us to learn and discover about ourselves, about people that we're working with as well. And so this has been like an incredible experience for me being a part of your world. And I hope that other people will get value from this and realize that there are options for you. If you're working with people and you're finding, so I was a nutritionist in the past and I got into NLP because I can make a perfect meal plan, but if the person doesn't recognize where they're getting in their own way and doesn't follow it and changes don't happen up here in your mind, change doesn't happen as effectively as it could. And so that's what I love about NLP, but with clients as well. I love seeing the transformations where it's quick also, which is pretty neat. When you have this like aha moment, all of a sudden things start to change and other things in your life change as well when you change yourself. So I think that was a very valuable share. So thank you for that. And also the SMART goals is something that people can take from this and look at the goals that they have set for going into the new year. And are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they attainable, realistic, and timely? You'll have a better outcome if you start even there. And if you want support and help beyond that, either Surinder or myself both would be more than happy to have that conversation. But is there anything, what else would you like to share before we sign off?
Well, just on the goals, just make sure that you're feeling the positive emotion
Mhm.
now as much as you can, instead of pushing the positive emotion out into the future and saying, I'll feel good when I get there. That's one. The other thing we didn't touch on, but it's worth mentioning, is put a different goal out into your future right before you achieve the first one.
Yeah.
Don't wait. So if you want to lose 20 pounds and you've lost 18, create a new goal, not necessarily a health goal, maybe related to something else that you can focus on. Don't wait until you actually achieve that goal. That will help with that because you still might have a little feeling of letdown when it happens. Less now that, as long as you actually apply what I'm teaching you, and what Kate and I have been teaching you, it'll be less. Chances are it'll still be there though. So the next thing that you can do to prevent that feeling is to put a different goal out into the future before you achieve the first one.
No.
But yeah, other than that, yeah, you're going to put the link for the 2-day event in Ottawa.
Hmm.
And there's one also in Mississauga that's in April. You'll put the link there for that.
Yes.
And if somebody wanted to register for either one of them, as long as they use that link and they register, they'll get the recordings for the Ottawa one. So even your people that want to come in April,
Hmm.
I'll give them the recordings for the one in Ottawa, and then we can do the exercises live together in April. Plus, I always change things up a little bit. I get bored easily, so none of these rewire your reality events are ever identical to each other. So,
Yes, absolutely. And I will be there in April again for this event. As I said, this is what I went to last year, and it like literally has changed the trajectory of so many different things in my life, relationships, my business, my like personal self. So yeah, I totally recommend it. Come check it out. And I will put the links for both of those in the show notes. Surinder's website will be there as well. And if any of this landed with you or you're looking for any more support, my email is in the show notes too, so reach out to me and we can set up a call to see if a breakthrough would be a good fit for you. But thank you so much for being here today, Surinder. It's been great, as always, having a conversation.
no, it was a very stimulating conversation. And look at where did the time go? I can't believe we've been talking for half an hour. I could talk for days about this topic. It's so much fun, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone
Thank
for
you very much,
listening.
Kate.
Thank you.
All
And
right.
we'll talk to you on the next one.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.